What happens when a band starts out at the story of Sweet? Formed in London in 1968, the classic lineup featured Brian Connolly on vocals, Steve Priest on bass, Andy Scott on guitar, and Mick Tucker behind the kit. At first, they were guided by hit-making producers Chin and Chapman, cranking out sugary singles like Funny Funny and Coco. But Sweet wanted to be more than bubblegum. Behind the glitter and costumes, they were a tight, hard-rocking band, itching to prove themselves. Their breakout came with glam anthems that defined the generation. Little Willie, Ballroom Blitz, and Fox on the Run minis. Suddenly, Sweet weren't just another glam rock band. They were influencing the future of hard rock, paving the way for bands like Def Leppard and Motley Crue. But fame took its price. Lead singer Brian Connolly was living the high life of a rock star. He had health struggles that led to his departure in 1979, just as the band's momentum began to fade. Though Andy Scott and Steve Priest kept different versions of Sweet alive, Connolly passed away in 1997, Tucker in 2002, and Priest in 2020. Still, their music survived. From the arena-shaking power of Ballroom Blitz to the soaring drama of Love is Like Oxygen, Sweet's catalog remained a glittering time capsule of glam rock at its peak, when rock was heavy, fun, and impossible to ignore. Tell me something about Ballroom Blitz.
We used to do like rehearsals, pre-recorded rehearsals, and the band would have a day, and then Phil would come down and kind of school us with his thoughts. When he came down, we had Ballroom Blitz sounding a bit like a Deep Purple track, not with this drum, this 50s, 60s drum track, old style. We probably thought of it in a way like Burn, or with a little bit of power. And he said, no. He said, I've definitely got it. And he said, you lot go and have a cup of tea. Me and Mick are going to work something out. And when we came back about half an hour later, this thing, I immediately went, oh, that sounds like people like Eric Delaney, went Sandy Nelson, actually. That's when we realized, that this was Mick and Phil making their dream drum record that they used to keep talking about. And this is before Cozy Powell's Dance with the Devil, remember? And it's also before Golden Earrings, Radar Love. Yeah. But all of them great records.
Whose idea was it, by the way? Whose idea was it to call out the names of the band members?
Mike Chapman. Over the intro, his demo was chaotic, was chaos. He'd just been to see us at a gig where the crowd went nuts, and Brian and I ended up in the audience body surfing. I was worried that they were going to smack the neck off my guitar, and the scissors were out from girls trying to cut your hair. And he came to that gig, and he went away and wrote the Ballroom Blitz. And when he came to it on his demo, he starts off with him just chunking on his acoustic guitar, and going, "Are you ready, Steve? And you, Andy?" And he sounded like Johnny Cash. That kind of thing. And then he's off. And I have to say, the end result, I thought it was good. I didn't expect it to be taken the way that it ended up being taken, as some, new dynamic, idea. I loved one of the reviews, though, in an English, you see, we were the band that some of the journalists loved to hate. And there was one review of the Ballroom Blitz in one of the papers. I think it was the New Musical Express, the NME. And it basically said, unadulterated rubbish. Wow. 2 words. Yeah. And it went straight into number 2 on the charts and stayed there for 6 weeks.
You're number 1. I guess a lot of people were buying rolls.
Yeah. There was one moment we were coming back from London. We'd seen Mike Chapman with his new Mercedes, and Nicky Ching came from Money anyway, and he had a Corniche convertible roller. Phil Wainman was buying himself a Bentley, and we all kind of went, sod this, mid 73.
Was this after number 1 with Blockbuster?
After Blockbuster, yeah. I think we had Hellraiser also going up to number 2 or something. I said, right, we're all in the car. and we stopped. Mick had already started to say he was buying a 600 Mercedes, the 6-litre Mercedes, because he'd seen Eric Clapton driving one. Steve and I said, well, we want Silver Shadows. And there was a dealership on the road back to where we were living at the time. And we told the driver to pull in there. We steamed in. What have you got? Steve went, I'll have that one. And I went, I'll have that one. We didn't drive them home there and then, but we wrote some checks out and left it with them. They said we just need a day or two to prepare it. Next thing I knew, we were having them delivered at our houses. We bought them out of the band's money. Nicky Chin threatened to take our checkbook away. And we basically told him to, politely, the second words off. And it was at this point where Phil Wainman was laughing his head off because he could see what was coming. And being an ex-musician, he knew what was on the cards. And then we started to break into America. And of course, me, kid in a candy shop, New York, 48th Street, straight down there. I'm going home with guitars after every tour, and we're talking late 50s, early 60s Stratocasters and 335s, and that was fantastic.
You toured with Bob Seger for quite a long time. I forgot about that. Yeah.
He was he was on Capitol Records. It seemed to be an ideal fit. I mean, I loved the sax player Alto Reed. He was.
We just lost him.
In fact, he sadly, but Bob, I think, had issues with substances, perhaps, or a beer or two. I remember his tour manager saying nobody offered Bob anything, no alcohol. I remember Alto coming into our dressing room every night to just have a slug of Jack Daniels or something. He said there's sod all in our dressing room. It's as dry as a nun's private parts in there. And it was, so we got to know Alto rather well,
Did your parents see your success?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
That must have been a proud moment for them. I mean, you were all over the place. You were a worldwide band. You were like everywhere, especially by the time the 70s came, the US embraced you. It was a phenomenon. It was big.
Yeah. I mean, I didn't have to do the thing that a lot of musicians do where they buy their parents a house because we already had a big, there were four kids in the family. We already had a big semi-detached house in North Wales, so it was just a matter of making sure that they were okay. Yeah. My dad and my mum was, in fact, in a pandemic like this, my mum would have been running a whole nurses station, in a hospital. So quite a busy house. We were not latchkey kids, but because my mum and dad did work hard, we all had keys, to get into the house and, make sure that, we were safe and all of that. So.
But did you know at the time that everything around you, when you were a teenager, for instance, did you know that, hey man, stuff's happening here?
Well, I got a vibe of that. I was in a northern soul band. I mean, over here, it meant that you were doing covers of Tamla Motown and Stax and the soul singers. Intermingled with a little bit of people like Georgie Fame or Mose Allison. You'd throw in some left field curveballs, and we were very lucky. In 1967, 66, we'd won this talent competition on TV. We'd been 5 weeks, we just kept winning. And then a comedian who became very, very famous after this show beat us just before Christmas in November. And then we're all on the Christmas show. And our first set of gigs in January were with Jimi Hendrix. He came over to England and he had Hey Joe, and I'd heard it. It was like Cream. I knew who Cream were because I knew all the players and where they'd come from, the Yardbirds and the Graham Bond organization and things like this. But when they released their first single, Wrapping Paper, it wasn't representative of what the band was. And there's still something inside me that tells me when Hendrix released Hey Joe, it wasn't quite representative of exactly where he was going to be. To a lot of promoters, they obviously thought, oh, he's like a soul singer with his bluesy ballad, And when he came and played this gig, he emptied the hall. We went down phenomenally because it was in Manchester, and Manchester was the hotbed and the centre of the soul music back then in 1967. So we went on stage for our hour, and we've been on TV, we've won this talent show, everybody's into it. Hendrix comes on, and within 15 minutes, they're all starting to drag themselves away. But me and my singer are on the side of the stage, riveted, watching this guy. I was literally, 2 or 3 meters from him, and he's got the guitar on the floor and he's lying on top of it and all this stuff. And I just looked at this guy, and we're a 7-piece soul band. And I said, that's the future. Cream had just started to make an appearance. Led Zeppelin hadn't quite got there yet. And, all these 3-piece bands. I mean, Sweet, guitar, bass, drums, and a singer. And I thought to myself, that's the future. Now, I'd been playing bass, even though I could play guitar and keyboards. I had been playing bass in the soul band. But the first thing that we did, within 6 months, we changed into this crossover band, playing, what you might consider to be fairly prog rock these days. A little bit of, the singer could play flute and Hammond organ anyway. So we were immediately, getting involved with all of that. And I'm thinking to myself, this is going to go somewhere. And of course, when it doesn't quite go where you want, you move to London, and you're thinking, I joined a band in London, which split up. And I always believe in a bit of karma, the opportunity to go and I'd met the Sweet. They were a bit of a pop band at that time. And I thought, in for a penny. And I went along to the audition, got the gig. And within 6 months, we were charted everywhere in the bleeding world. So, it was the right decision, the right sort of time. They do say that there's these sliding door moments when, you walk into something. And if you're 5 minutes late, it all changes,
Yeah. Did your parents get what you were doing when you were a kid?
My dad was an entertainer when he was a child. He used to go into talent competitions. He used to sing along with a doll strapped to his feet. So he would do this dance routine and sing. And, Harry Scott was, quite in demand. And then the war broke out, and anybody who was fairly fit went into either reserve or training. He wasn't quite old enough to go out there, and I'm glad of that, because he was a lovely man. He was, my hero. So from that point of view, when my brother and I, because my brother's a great musician as well, started to go off and do things, he would help. He would get in the car. He would, there were times when he knew I was going to have to get my bass gear and bass onto a bus to get down to a village so that I could do the gig. Well, he would say, come on, stick it in the back of the car. And then he'd say, right, you make sure you're ready at 11 o'clock, because, I'm not going to hang about, I think he was a bit concerned schooling wise, because I got to this point where I could have gone to university. It was just one of those things, I didn't do a lot of what they call swatting, but things stuck, in certain subjects like maths, English, geography, a couple of languages. So I could have probably done something. And he didn't realize that I'd already left school and I wasn't doing my exams. I'd actually turned professional, because I was actually earning a decent bit of money with this soul band, especially after winning the talent show. So
how old would you have been then?
Just 17.
Yeah.
And he was a bit unnerved, so he said, look, get yourself a job. And I thought, oh, right, okay. Working in a bank seemed to be the thing. You didn't work on a Saturday, or so I thought, until I started to work in this branch that was slightly outside of the town. And of course, it's the only focal point for miles. And on a Saturday, loads of farmers wanted to come in on a Saturday morning and bank all their money and get money out for the wages for their. So every Friday night, this small bank was loaded with money. And I remember thinking to myself, God, you know, you read about the great train robbery. This is one branch that's, you know, I said, no, I don't want to be here on a Friday. And of course, I would leave early on Fridays and they would say, you can't do this. And the van would be outside and I get in with the band and we go off. And I wouldn't show up on a Saturday morning. So it was destined to not last.
Yeah.
But I think he realized, you know, after we'd won the talent competition, that there might just be something in this. I remember him putting me on a few years later when my brother and I moved to London. He put us on the train. This would be in the end of '69, and wished us well.